Hello, welcome to Creature Feature, scary monster books to read at night. This presentation will talk through some of the books that cover monsters that are on land. So it'll be Bigfoot, it'll be monsters in the forest, it'll be monsters in your house, it'll be little tiny monsters, whether it's insects or viruses, so all kinds of monsters. And we're gonna go ahead and get started. The first set of monsters are wild animals. So they're real animals, they're big cats, they're tigers, they're wolves, real wolves, not werewolves. The first one that comes to mind obviously is Stephen King's Cujo, which is this big rabid dog, and he really terrorizes a family that moves in next door. Stephen King really does these real animals in a monster way really greatly. Pet Sematary is another one. There's also one called Devil's Cat by William Johnstone. That's a tiger. It's a big cat that terrorizes a bunch of people. There's Predators by Michael Brent Collins and The Wolfen by Whitley Strieber. The next set of monsters are the really tiny monsters, so the insect monsters. Obviously you think of like arachnophobia, things like that. So when it comes to books, I highly recommend the one by Ezekiel Boone. It's a trilogy of books. The first one's called The Hatching, which is a bunch of spiders that take over the world and pretty much topple civilization. It comes to the point where the United States thinks of doing a nuclear option and bombing the United States itself, their own citizens, to stop these spiders from taking over the world. So the first one's called The Hatching. The second book in the trilogy is called Skitter. And then the third one is called 0 Day. So it's really great. It's really creepy because the spiders do like take over people and they eat people, and it gets really creepy that way. So I highly recommend that. That trilogy is by Ezekiel Boone. There's also one called Don't Move by James Murray. Again, you can see spider webs on the cover. It's more spiders. Spiders are kind of a go-to when it comes to monster books. Some of the other ones that are a little lesser known, there's The Nest, which is a bit of cockroaches. So where cockroaches, because they can survive almost anything, they can take over. If you find, this nest of, I think they were mutant cockroaches, so they can take over. So that's The Nest by Gregory Douglas. After insects, let's go to reptiles. So reptiles can be pretty scary in a lot of different ways, and they're used as monsters from a variety of reptiles. So from snakes to alligators to crocodiles. Those are pretty average ones, but sometimes the authors can take it a little bit farther. So there's a book called Just Add Water by Hunter Shea. And the premise of that one is a couple of boys in like the 60s and 70s had gotten one of those mail order, you used to have like the mail order seahorses and things like that. Well, they had gotten mail order sea serpents. So they got them in the mail, they put them in this little bit of water, and they were so boring and awful that they just threw them down the drain. Well, they went into the sewer and there was a nuclear runoff, and then those little mail order sea serpents turned into something huge and some big monster that was going to terrorize the town 30 years later. So that's called Just Add Water by Hunter Shea. Also by Hunter Shea is The Montauk Monster. So Hunter Shea does a lot of these monster books, and he does a really great job at taking something that is kind of normal and just twisting it slightly into something original. So The Montauk Monster is one that terrorizes the city of Montauk. And the tagline for that book says, "This time terror has teeth." So no monster presentation would be really complete without talking about Bigfoot stories. There's a lot of books about Bigfoot, fiction novels. The first one is Master of the Forest by Artem Dereshuk, and that's set in like a German city. So it's a Bigfoot-like big hairy monster set in a German city. But I also wanted to focus a lot on Max Brooks' Devolution. So Max Brooks is known for like World War Z. He is known for these books that are almost like nonfiction, but they're not. So Devolution follows it's the true story of a Bigfoot attack in an Oregon gated community. So it's set as like news stories and recollections of the survivors and things like that. So if you like that sort of thing, then you'll like Max Brooks' Devolution. If you want like the absolute fiction, heart-pounding monster thing, then you might not like Max Brooks as much. People usually either love it or they hate it. Okay, so werewolves, they have to be included in any sort of monster book list. So the first one I'm going to recommend is called The Bloody Chamber by Angela Carter, and that's a retelling of typical fairy tale type things. So like Little Red Riding Hood. Angela Carter takes that and just slightly changes it so it's more of a girl goes walking in the woods and she runs into a werewolf, and usually she takes a feminist twist on them. So maybe the girl kills the werewolf or somehow comes out on top. So it's called The Bloody Chamber, and it's a collection of short stories. Just a forewarning though, they can get really bloody and gory. So if you're not into that, you might want to give this one a miss. The other one is called In the House in the Dark of the Woods by Laird Hunt. Again, you know, a lot of these werewolf ones, they're based off of the Wolf and the Little Red Riding Hood. They're kind of just a retelling of that base story, because that's really common across a lot of cultures, right? The werewolf mythology is really common across many different cultures. Stephen King did The Cycle of the Werewolf. Those Across the River by Christopher Bullman. And you can even do Full Wolf Moon by Douglas Preston and Lee Child. They do a really great Jeremy Logan series where they put a scientific spin on the werewolf. And so it's more of like a radiation from the moon turns, you know, gives people hallucinations sort of thing. So it's not an actual, it gives you a kind of a possible scientific basis for werewolfism, for lycanthropy. In addition to, you know, werewolves and real creatures, a lot of the monster books talk about ice creatures. So these are things like the Abominable Snowman or Yeti, saber-toothed tigers that were frozen and then unearthed and come to like kill the scientific camp. So there's a lot of creatures that can be found in the ice or at least in the tundra. So the first one is Lincoln Child, called Terminal Freeze, and that's really one of the first couple books in the Jeremy Logan series. I've mentioned that before. Jeremy Logan is an entomologist, so he goes and researches, investigates unknown, mysterious phenomena. And one of these is a scientific camp in the Arctic have unearthed some sort of prehistoric cat or monster. It looks like a cat, but they're not sure what it is. And so he goes to help them investigate. It starts to thaw, and then at night it goes and kills the scientists. So that's Terminal Freeze by Lincoln Child. There's also The Terror by Dan Simmons. That's kind of a historical fiction novel. So it's like an Arctic expedition where there's some sort of ice monster hunting them, and it's set in like, you know, the high point of British exploration in the Arctic. So it's like the late 1800s. And then there's Terror on the Tundra by J. Esker Miller. Again, big cats on the ice. They can get really scary. And no monster list would be complete without dinosaurs or prehistoric creatures. So obviously, you would have to mention Jurassic Park. If you've just seen the movie and not read the book, I highly recommend you read the book. It's very different than the movie. There's a lot more science in the book than there was in the movie. And, it's a really great book. It's a classic. It has withstood the years. There's a bunch of sequels as well. You could read The Lost World. Anything if you want your T-Rex fix, I highly recommend Jurassic Park. You can do The Dark Island by Matt James, Eden by Tim Levin, but I really wanted to focus a bit on Fragment by Warren Fahey. So this book is, the premise is there's an island really isolated in the South Pacific that no one has ever been able to land on. So it's really evolved into its own little ecosystem over billions of years. There has been no human contact on this island. And so it has evolved its own little ecosystem and monsters. Some of them are very frightening, like they're a cross between a saber-toothed tiger and a spider with, like, you know, imagine a saber-toothed tiger with 8 legs. But it's also evolved sentient life, so it's like humanoid people. And so scientists come to this island, they have to fight all the monsters there. There are all sorts of different monsters. And then they try and take the sentient people off the island and get them rights in the rest of the world. So it's a really interesting one. There is a sequel to that one called Pandemonium, and they're all available at the library. So there's lots of alien monsters too. Obviously you have the Alien series. So you have Alien, Alien vs. Predator, Alien 3. You've got that set. There's Dune, there's Ice Rift. I wanted to focus a bit on something called The Grendel's Shadow by Andrew Mayne. I really enjoyed this book because it has that, because it seems like it's set in modern day, but it's on an alien planet. So basically what it is there's monsters on one of this alien planet, and there's this galactic monster hunter who goes around and he takes all these odd jobs in hunting down different monsters. But every planet has their own rules, right, based on technology. So this particular planet with the monster, they can't have technology or high technology. So he comes in with like a musket gun and axes and, you know, kind of primitive technology based, considering it's a galactic empire, right? So he could have all these like cool laser cannons and stuff, but he can't use them because it's the particular planet that he's on. So he has to go hunt these alien monsters, and you know, it's very much like slinking through the jungle with these alien crabs chasing you, and they have like razor sharp pinchers. So I highly recommend that one. It's called The Grendel's Shadow by Andrew Mayne. So that's it for the creature features. Take a look at all of these books. You can find them on the library catalog. You can find them on Overdrive and Hoopla. We've got ebooks and audiobooks. And take a look at them. Have a read. Just don't read at night or by yourself.